then we're gonna scream. And I'm gonna share it on my Robin's Healing too.
Okay, yeah, and I'll share it out on mine too.
So we'll give ourselves like a couple minutes there.
Sure.
Okay. What's our title? Daisy Farrell?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm still working on my tech skills.
Yeah, it's fine. We all are, right?
Woohoo!
All right.
Okay, so let's go live. Shall we?
Yeah, let's do it. So it looks like it's streaming now, so let me just see. I just want to make sure I'm able to share it. I don't see it yet, but let me see.
Okay. Now I'm just looking to get back into my Zoom. We will figure this out.
Is it streaming on your personal page?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I see us on Facebook. And
Oh, okay, good.
so that's all that matters.
Yeah.
I'm gonna trust. So, my name is Robin, and I own Robin's Healing, and I'm here to do an interview with Daisy Farrell. She is a medium, and she is amazing. And I'm just gonna let her kind of talk about herself, a little bit about her journey and how she helps people.
Thanks, Robin. Oh, I'm very happy to be on here. So should I just go into kind of how I came into this work, or?
Yeah, you can just let people know kind of like, yeah, how you communicate with spirit, I know you're doing Akashic Records as well, so just like anything that you do and whatever.
All right, yeah. So I'll just give a little summary as to kind of how I came into this work and everything. So for me, it was kind of a long process. As a kid, I think I was definitely born with this stuff, but I wasn't totally aware of it at the time. I know there's definitely some mediums out there that say from day one, they were like talking to spirits and everything. And I definitely, after coming into this now, I can look back and see those situations more clearly. But at the time, like it wasn't maybe as obvious when I was younger. I was an only child, so I was always very creative and kind of exploring like outside by myself and everything. And I definitely feel like that was a very like spiritually kind of charged thing, but I just didn't maybe realize it at the time in a way that maybe I would now. But basically, my whole situation growing up, I dealt with a lot of depression and anxiety very early on. And again, I think that was very much associated with being empathic and being sensitive. And for a long time, I didn't understand what that was. And I think I often just absorbed all the stuff going on around me from different people. I would feel other people that I was friends with, as if I was them when they were in pain. And it was a lot for me, I think, younger. And that ended up developing into drug addiction when I was pretty young, and an eating disorder and all kinds of stuff like that. And again, I think a lot of it had to do with, first of all, just trying to find some kind of coping mechanism for all this extra anxiety that I was feeling and depression and kind of this uncertainty of like what was really going on. I think for a long time, I was just very unaware of like what was truly happening in me. And I kind of, I mean, I think high schoolers can be really mean. So I think they, I don't think they understood it either. So that definitely made it worse, I think, for a long time. So again, it made me feel very kind of lost for a long time. I know there was a part of me that felt very sure of myself and knew what I wanted or wanted to do and felt sure of myself. But for a long time, I kind of kept that quiet because I just was not sure about it. That led into a whole deal with just kind of abusive relationships, drug addiction, and everything, and it just got worse and worse over time. To the point where I just felt very disconnected from my own identity of who I was and just completely kind of just running on empty. I just wasn't even like really living, right? I ended up going to art school in Baltimore, actually, which was great, but also when things got like the worst for me. And it's interesting because again, now like looking back now, I was actually staying in a old women's hospital as like my dorm. And I think I was picking up on stuff there at the time that I wasn't really aware of it though. But so like there's always been these little hints of things, growing up, that were kind of alluding to maybe what would be happening later. But I was just so caught up in my own stuff, I just wasn't even really aware of it. And finally, I hit a bottom and I was introduced to AA. And I was really, really lucky for that. And I'm very lucky that I was introduced to it so young, because unfortunately, I know a lot of people don't get introduced to it for a long time. And for sure, I was definitely resistant of it for quite some time because I was like, I'm too young for this. Like, why do I need to be doing all this heavy work, at such a young age? All of that. Again, I wasn't fully understanding what this was leading to though. And through a lot of work and a lot of ups and downs and relapses, I finally did get the program to a certain degree, enough where it started to work in my life. And it completely changed my life for sure. I just, and that's something I love AA. I really do. And one of the most amazing things about it is just that it gives you this opportunity to just learn who you are from just square one, and to truly develop this healing and this relationship with yourself that you never really had before. And for me, that it was just so invaluable because it just over time it slowly rebuilt all of this stuff that had been completely undone and confused for so long. It created this confidence, this newness, and this healing in me. And I started to understand who I really was in a way that I never did before. And my relationships completely changed. I cut a lot of people out of my life and new people came in that were really healthy and aligned. And it actually wasn't until I had 2 years sober that spirit really came into my life completely. And for me, like I always had psychics and stuff in my family growing up, and I'd always been fascinated by it and very into it, but I never thought like that I was gonna do it. Both my grandmothers were really, really powerful psychics, and I was very close to them, and they were both artists too. And my one on my dad's side, she was an artist, and she also had a lot of precognition dreams, and her and me shared a lot of that, and also did our art based on those dreams. And that was the only thing that had ever happened to me early on. Like I had a premonition dream of a friend of mine passing away when I was only like 10, and it came true when I was about 16. And again, when that happened though, for me, it was always like this weird, creepy thing that happened to me or whatever, but I didn't think that it was really anything else. And I remember even like I had gotten like tarot cards a few times, like I was all into that stuff, but I wasn't really serious about it for a long time. I just thought it was just for fun. And yeah, and the thing was like I had these oracle cards and stuff and a pendulum when I was just getting sober, and I just started dabbling with them again when I was sober. And it led into more. But what really happened too was that, so after I had about 2 years sober, I was going through a really traumatic time in my life personally. And on top of that, I had lost, I believe it was 3 close people to me within a year. And it was right then that basically those dreams started to happen for me. And for me, like I had always had really, really vivid dreams my whole life, very vivid, very bizarre and detailed. And I always remembered them in great detail. And again, I didn't realize maybe their kind of spiritual nature to them until later, but I started getting visitation dreams from these people. And it was different though than like my precognition dreams, because I actually ended up having a precognition dream about my grandmother passing away, and her and me, and she actually had one too. And like we had talked about it. And then that came true. And after all of that, I started getting these dreams where people were talking to me. So it was now like they were giving messages to me. And for example, like one of my fiance's best friends passed away, and that was the first time that that had happened. I had a dream that like I was my fiance actually, and I was on Facebook Messenger, and I was messaging his friend, and we were having a conversation. And later, you know, and at first I didn't really think anything of it. I thought it was just kind of weird. But then I had talked to my fiance about it, and he's like, well, that's like how he would talk. You know, those are the kinds of things he would say. And then I was starting to think like, oh, okay, well, and they were trying to make it really obvious for me, because they were literally making me my fiance, to be like, this isn't for you, this is for him. And they were actually trying to make it pretty easy. But again, it took a minute for me to kind of understand what was really going on. And then I had another one that happened a few times when a close friend passed away again. And she started coming through so strong in these dreams, and they were so vivid. And I would remember all of it, and it was just crazy for me. And actually also at the same time, we were having all kinds of like weird little things happening in our apartment, like electronics going on and off by themselves, weird noises, like I was seeing stuff. So obviously something was trying to get my attention, and I started pulling cards again. And I had this one deck that had a card that said mediumship on it. And I literally pulled that card like 20 times in probably the span of like a week or, you know, a month. I just kept pulling that card. And I was like, that's kind of weird. And then finally, I ended up going to a medium. And actually, it was because of my therapist, which is actually Laura Mazzata, who I adore. And she, at the time, she was like, oh, that's something. Like, you should really look into that more. And if it wasn't for her, actually, I mean, she was a big part of like kind of motivating me into looking into it further. So I actually went to a medium later on, because I just wanted some like confirmation. I was just kind of confused. I was like, I want to understand what this is doing, or like what this means. And he basically was able to confirm all of it for me. And so again, though, for a long time, I was very skeptical. I'm someone that's I'm very imaginative and creative, but I'm also like very practical. So for a long time, it took a while for me to really trust what was going on. And again, everything had still been in dreams up until that point. So I was still kind of like, I don't know, like, can I really do that when I'm awake or what? And I wasn't sure. And I was lucky enough to find another mentor that came into my life, and I did a beginner's class with her. And that's when I connected to spirit for the first time. And I remember I was like shocked, because I was like, I didn't even think I could do it, or like, I just wasn't aware of it. And after it happened though, it was like something kind of clicked for me. And after I had done it the first time, it's like it just kind of opened up something that was always there. And I was like, oh, like this makes a lot of sense. And it just progressed very naturally and very quickly for me. Because it was just, again, it was like I felt like it was just opening a door that was always in me. But I just needed somebody to help guide me in there. And once it happened, it expanded really quickly. I was at this full-time job as a bakery manager. And you know, that part of it was like part of the creative stuff and everything. But again, like, I didn't love being there. And I knew after this happened, it was one of those things where it was like, how are you supposed to go back to normal life after you've realized something so huge like that, that there's so much more going on? And I felt so compelled and drawn to the fact that like, I really feel like that's what I'm meant to do. So it took a while, but for a while I was just trying to ignore it, or I was like, I know it's there and I'm definitely really, really interested. And I was working on expanding it more. I went through a few other teachers. And as I kept doing that, though, it just became harder and harder to ignore. And more synchronicities and things kept taking place in my life that just were showing me like, this is what you're supposed to do. Just stuff that I could not ignore or just, you know, play off as a coincidence. And so finally, I quit my job. I finally quit my job. And also at the same time, um, I had started to feel ill, and I now was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So at the time that was also happening. And I do feel like all of this is correlated with like my own healing and things that had to come to light. And it was all just part of like, again, you're supposed to shift here. Like you need to shift what you're doing. And so I quit my job and decided that I wanted to commit to doing this work. And ever since then, it's just continued to evolve and expand. And I've just brought so many other amazing people into my life, and I've met so many interesting people. And also just my practice has expanded and evolved a lot, where I think a big thing over time as I was developing, um, I was seeing that there was kind of a gap or something missing in mediumship that I felt like I really wanted to help with. And that was mainly that I felt that there was sometimes a resistance to wanting to connect to people that had passed away that had been known as addicts or abusive people, even, right? So people that maybe would be like not the friendliest. I found that there was a lot of resistance to connecting with that energy with a lot of people in the mediumship community. And again, I think there's so many different mediums for a reason. I think everybody's different, and you need that variety of people to bring through different types of people. But I just felt so drawn to, at least for me, that I kept bringing through people that were drug addicts or people that had those kinds of histories because I understood it, and just because of my own background. And for me though, I thought it was so rewarding because the thing is that I wanted to try to show people like you don't have to be afraid of these people, because again, once you transition into spirit, it's like that stuff is not there anymore, right? They have this understanding that's so much more expanded, and they're not carrying that heaviness anymore. And for me, I really felt that those were the kinds of people that needed to come through to create this sense of healing. Because yeah, it's great if you want to bring through your grandma that made pie and was super nice, and like that's awesome. And some people may really need that, and that's totally fine. But I just felt that there's so many people out there that weren't given the opportunity to have a voice necessarily because they were considered maybe like, I don't really want to talk to you, or like kind of makes me uncomfortable. And for me, I'm like, yes, no, I want to help give them a voice, and I want to help heal their loved ones, because again, like there's so many unanswered questions and things like that with addiction and all of that I feel so compelled to help with and to help heal. And that's just, again, and like I knew that that was such a piece of like what I was doing because it kept coming through over and over and over again. So that's a big piece of a lot of like my mediumship. And of course, it's not all the time, but it's just something that I like to emphasize on, is just the fact that I really try to bring through whoever is meant to come through, regardless of like how they were as a human, right? And kind of just trying to show that we're all just humans. Like it's not something that we have to be so afraid of, or with who we're bringing through. I really try to just bring through exactly who's meant to come up for the people that I'm helping. And over time, that's expanded into work with past lives, Akashic records, guides, different things like that. And then of course, there's always like a psychic aspect to all of this as well. One thing that's interesting is like sometimes, I'll be tapping into the person's energy, but then also sometimes I'll have like a loved one in spirit that will just hang around the whole time, and they'll basically be telling me everything about my sitter. And again, that also turned into a lot of like Reiki and healing like that. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I know it's like, I feel like I've been talking a lot, but like that's kind of the generalized idea of everything.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
Even though I can't see you on Zoom, it's okay. That's why if I'm just staring. Okay, I'm learning. And that's what's kind of coming up is like how you access spirits. Or do you hear them? Do you see them?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do they look like to you? Because as you were speaking, I saw this, it looked like a dark shadow, like almost like walk behind you.
Oh, that's really interesting. That's cool because that's a great question. So again, I think it's different for everybody. And I think that's fascinating too. I think it is so interesting. And that's the other thing that I love about this work is that it's never boring. It's never like because it's just always different, and always like spirit always manages to shock me or do something unbelievable. But for me, what's also really cool is that that also evolves as well over time, like how they've shown themselves to me. But essentially, kind of when I first tap into a person, again, it's really hard to explain, but it's basically like I'm seeing everything clairvoyantly a lot of the time. But again, I'm also understanding where they are in my space, if that makes sense. So for example, like I'll see kind of a shadowy figure. And that's why it was funny that you were saying that. And I understand that they're behind me. They always feel like they're behind me. But I'm seeing it clairvoyantly, if that makes sense. It's a little tricky to explain. But most of the time when I first connect with somebody, I'll see kind of like just part of their body. And I won't see their face a lot of the times. It will just kind of be this like shadowy figure. And usually I often see people without a face a lot of the times, which I always thought was really interesting. And for a while too, like I would see men with a face like far in the distance kind of, and then a lot of times when I would see women, like they don't have a face, which is always just really interesting to me. So for the most part, it's always like that. Like when I'm around somebody or something like that, I'll feel or see like a person pop up behind me like that. And then as I kind of draw them closer, depending on how many are there or whatever, then I'll start to connect with them more. And really for me, which I find so cool, is just that I basically end up being put like in their body. And it's kind of like I'm seeing through their eyes. And so again, a lot of this is clairvoyant. So again, just as if I'm thinking of a memory of my own, and they'll put me in their eyes and they'll show me memories, and I can look down at my body and I see their body, and they'll show me a lot of things like that with like things that happen to them physically maybe, or different, memories. And then they'll also at the same time kind of come in and out of that. And then I'll also see like things in the distance kind of in this black space. So I'll see like little like people or figures like far away, or sometimes they're really close. And sometimes I'll just see one object of some kind. And then at the same time, I also will hear things, and I will also know things and feel things. So I kind of get this whole mixture of stuff. A lot of times when I'm hearing stuff, like it depends. Like sometimes that's in my own voice, right? But it's their thoughts. And sometimes too, I'll hear noise from like a memory or just something about an environment they were in. I'll smell things too, things like that, taste things. And when it comes to like things that happen to them physically, like as a way of passing or something, sometimes I'll just get an indicator to like go to a place in my body. Sometimes I'll see like a kind of a Grey's Anatomy type thing where I literally see, like the body in front of me as like a diagram, and they'll highlight something. So, but it's just, again, it's just like really fascinating because it's always really different. It also really depends on the type of person I'm connecting to. Because if somebody I'm connecting with is, let's say, very analytical and not creative, because I've had that happen before where they're like, Daisy, I don't think like that. So then they just tell me a lot of information as opposed to showing me a lot of stuff. So that's also what's super interesting too.
Well, information. So,
Yeah.
when it comes to the ego and things like that,
Mhm.
like how do you, for people that are like a medium, like I know that I am,
Mhm.
because it's new to me. Like I saw that spirit next to you.
Mhm.
Like how do you distinguish between like your logical and going into that mediumship portion? Like, because I'll be like, oh, is there somebody in the room with you?
Mhm.
And I saw their shadow, right? You know how we constantly go to those facts and the logical. Like
Oh yeah.
how do you develop like just trusting that what you're seeing is real?
Yeah, so no, I love that question because again, I think that's one of the biggest things that we all deal with when we're in development for that kind of stuff. And again, I mean, something that I always try to point out is that a big piece of that as well is that, especially clairvoyantly, right? A lot of where that stuff happens is the same exact place that our imagination is and where we develop those areas that our imagination. So it feels the same because of that. And that's where I think sometimes also that can be hard for us because we're like, well, it feels just like as if I was telling myself to imagine a black dog, for example, right? But again, I think a big part of that too happens with just time. because I think it's really, for a long time, our human selves, our ego, and everybody's a little different with that, because I know for me, I need like proof. For a long time, I was very stubborn with that. And again, it would take like, I could get 100 things right that I had no way of knowing. I'd still be like, well, I mean, I just guessed it. I was very stubborn about it for a long time. But I think a big piece of it is just with practice, as you keep doing readings, as you keep practicing with that, you start to develop patterns and an understanding of how this stuff shows up for you. And again, it's really very subtle, because I think that's the other thing. Sometimes people don't realize how subtle it can be. And it's really like really fine tuning that understanding of that shift in energy and being able to discern between your own and other energy. And I think again, that's where like I was very lucky, because I do think a big piece that sometimes is missed in mediumship development is self-work. And I think that's sometimes where people, let's say, that have a lot of unresolved stuff going on that they haven't looked at maybe, and they try to develop as a medium, that's going to get in the way of stuff. Because again, it creates this filter for us. It creates this bias and different things that we just may not be aware of. And it's going to filter through what we're getting. And it can mess with our own understanding of our own energy too. Because that's the other thing. Like, the more work we do on ourselves as a foundation, that's why I really think that's like the best thing to start with. Because we're learning ourselves. We're learning how our mind works, how our energy feels, what our aura is like. And the more understanding we have of that, the more grounded we can be, and the better understanding we're going to have when a different energy is being introduced to that. And that's why I think really starting with basics is such a thing. Like with that, you really, really just working on healing yourself and just meditating and feeling your own energy. Some people in mediumship call that sitting in the power. It's a little different from meditating, but sitting in the power can sometimes be allowing spirit to just enter your space. You don't have to try to like do a reading, but just feeling the energy of spirit around you to start to build and understand how that feels different from your own energy, if that makes sense. And it's just, I think for me, like I was saying, like it's just something with time. I think over time, I started to just understand what this energy felt like. And I got better at just allowing myself to trust whatever was coming through, no matter how weird it is, no matter what it is. I think part of the thing too that was lucky was just that me being like an artist and a very weird, like creative person has been very helpful for mediumship, just because I'm more able to kind of be like, yeah, that's weird. Like I can talk about that. Like a lot of people I think sometimes get embarrassed, or they're like, that's too weird to say or whatever, but I'm like, I'll say it. Like, so I think that's something that really helped too. I hope that answers the question, but.
Yeah, it does. And you kind of talked about seeing like males, they would show their face, and then male wouldn't. I find that really neat, because
yeah,
I think that like spirit shows you things, like you said, in almost in like levels, so that is it so that you don't get scared, or is it just different spirits show different
yeah, I love that question. So I think like really what it is that, again, yeah, I think every spirit is just going to show you stuff differently. They're going to show you what they want to show you. But at the same time, I think sometimes people forget that they have a lot of control over it as well. Because I think, again, and that's also why, and I try really hard to like try to dispel this with like the fear around it. And because I think sometimes a lot of people have fear, they're like, I don't want to see like horrible imagery of like death or like stuff like that. And like, you don't have to. And I think sometimes people maybe have an experience where they see that or whatever, and then they get freaked out. But a big piece of that is also saying like, hey, thank you so much for trying to help me understand you, but I'd love it if you could show me that in a different way next time. So just it because they're so eager and willing to work with you. That's all they want to do. So they're going to do whatever you want to try to make that connection. And also, it, again, I think it's partially that, and then it's just partially your own references. So when I say references, it's like based on my own knowledge of just growing up, everything that I've seen and experienced, spirit is going to use that to show me stuff. And again, it's different with every person, but for example, like spirit's not going to try to show me something that I necessarily like wouldn't understand. So for example, like if there's some kind of career that somebody has that I have no idea like what it is, they're going to try to figure it out in a more symbolic way to get me to say something about it. But if I know what it is, they're going to show it to me literally. And it's really interesting too, because sometimes I'll also, it varies because sometimes I will see like literal memories of that person and I'll see their space and everything. Then other times I'll actually have them show me a family memory, for example, but it will be taking place in my house that I grew up in. So it's just very interesting. It's just like this weird mixture. And also like sometimes they'll show me my own family members or things that I've experienced to give references to the sitter and things they've experienced or things that they did. So it's this interesting kind of combination of my own experiences and what they know I'm going to understand. And then also like, I'm trying to think of what I was about to say.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Because this can be quite scary for like people receiving, and it can be scary
Sure.
for the person like learning.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that it's like what would you recommend for people to not be scared? Like for me,
Mm-hmm.
when I had like a presence come into my bedroom, it's always like when the boyfriend's sleeping, like when I'm by
Mm-hmm.
myself, and I'm like, okay, I know who it is, they're in the room, but my heart would be beating out of my chest. And
Mm-hmm.
kind of like I think easy for people to go into like panic mode. So
Mm-hmm.
I would call in my angels, and I felt like that was really calming for me. And now what's weird is when I have a presence, I don't feel that fear anymore.
Yeah.
I work
Yeah.
with angels a lot. So is that just developing like tools so that your nervous system calms down? Or is it literally just like just don't be afraid anymore? Like trusting that it's a positive thing, not a negative.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's both because again, everybody is going to respond to energy differently too. Cause like we all like for you, like that's, you may feel that way. I know for me, so like when I was starting out, and this still happens to me, but like when I have like a person around me in spirit, I get this like really intense tingling sensation at the top of my spine. And I'll like shrug my shoulders a bunch and feel like weird. And that's how I often will know. I mean, sometimes I know without that, but that was always like a physical indicator I would get. And yeah, that can always like it's interesting because for me, like when I would have stuff happen like that where I'd be in bed and it would be like creepy, and I would think that I'd be like really freaked out, but then I would like be okay with it. And I'd be like, oh no, I know who it is. And I think a big part of it is the unknown. Like we're afraid, especially because like when you're starting out, you're not as familiar with spirit. You're not as familiar with what it feels like or what it is and how it works with you. So again, we're still in that kind of transitional space where we're trying to open up to something that is fairly unknown to us. So that's definitely going to add some form of fear because we're just unsure of like what this energy is, what is it going to do to us, how is it going to make us feel, and so forth. And again, I think a big piece of that is just the more we start to work with it and understand that it can't hurt us, and trusting and knowing that like we are in control. Like we are in control. I know there's a lot of information out there that says otherwise, and people can believe whatever they like. That's fine. I just know for myself, like I know that we have control. A spirit can't hurt us, and it's a relationship. And to me, I think it's a beautiful relationship. It's this amazing connection with something, and really it's this opportunity to just experience this loving, amazing presence around us. And yeah, that's the thing. I think at first when we just don't know that, or we're just learning what it feels like, it can be a little fearful, right? But again, it's like when we start having those experiences, instead of like panicking, more just trying really hard to calm down and be like, okay, who is this? Like, what do you want to show me? Why are you here? Why do you want to talk to me? And then letting them express themselves to you. Because I think that's the other thing. We sometimes confuse fear with like anxiety with just the fact that like a spirit's like, hey, like, yay, you can hear me. Like, I want to talk to you. And that's really all it is. Like, they don't want to hurt us or anything, but they're just like, they have a very intense energy because they want to talk, they want to be like, hey, yay, let's talk. And so again, it's just kind of learning that that's nothing to be afraid of. It's just like, no, they're just happy and they're like, yay, let me talk to you. And again, if like you're in bed and you're like, no, it's too late. Like, again, just having that kind of boundary and just being like, yeah, let's do this later, because that was something I had to do too. It's just having those kinds of boundaries with spirit is a big piece too. I know for some people they say like to when you're starting out to just like designate like 1 hour a day where you're like, okay, I'm open and I'm ready to receive from spirit right now. And then the rest of the time I'm closed. And I think for some people, they do need to have that kind of level of maybe control for some time.
All right, one more question.
Yeah, no, go ahead, go for it.
When it comes to like religion and stuff, I know some people are anti-mediums or they're skeptics and things like that. So why do you think that like people have the opinion that mediums are like bad or like evil or like it's a negative? Where do you think that comes from? Like, is that fear-based, or is there actually like why is there such a block from people? Like they almost just see it as like that you're doing something wrong, when to me it's like the most loving and beautiful thing, and it's kind of like witchcraft and stuff
Right.
like that, right? Like I'm tapping into all these beautiful rituals and spells, and I was like scared to use the word spell when I realized like this is so medicinal and healing and beautiful, and there's all this fear that kind of got stuck around me based on like old belief systems and like society and stuff. So how, like, why do you think that happens, and like how do you deal with that, because that's like a big roller coaster ride for a career like yours?
Right. Yeah. So again, I think that's definitely a very loaded and complex thing. I mean, I could probably talk about 5 hours about that, but I mean, to try to simplify it, I think it comes from so many different things. I think it's something that's really complex. And I think in some cases, that kind of fear or that develops almost out of like wanting control over other people and kind of wanting to separate, like trying to almost sift or separate the fact that like only certain people can hear divine messages or only certain people can receive that power, right? Because I'm absolutely not saying that that's true for all religions, but I know in some cases, I think some religions were meant to kind of more control people, more like organize things, right? And I think they use fear to control people. And I think that's all part of that. I think it's all part of that. Like just creating these kind of rules or saying like, you don't have access to this piece here. And almost like they want to keep a secret from people, almost like they want to keep people with less power and not unlocking this potential and knowing that they have this infinite source of healing, of love, of information that can be used for so many different things. And I think a lot of people in power, they don't like the idea of that, right? And so that's definitely one piece of it. And then another piece I think is just born out of, I mean, superstition, just years and years of different types of opinions and things that have been woven together. And I'm sure, the thing is, I'm sure like the origin of a lot of this stuff probably wasn't bad originally, right? And just over time, almost like this game of telephone to me, it's like things get skewed or changed over time. People take their own idea of it and whatever, and it gets kind of mixed up. So again, I think those are like maybe 2 out of probably a million reasons. But I think too, like that's something that I'm also really passionate about is like trying to help people, especially that have, let's say, have had certain really strict religious upbringings. I know for me, like a big one, like when people have committed suicide and are in spirit, I know like that's something I feel terrible about. Like a lot of people that have those strict upbringings, they're so afraid that their loved one is like in hell, right? Or is like, being punished. And a big one for me is that I've never seen anything like that. I really don't believe that that's true at all. So it's something that I also just try to help people with to kind of relieve like this fear that their loved ones are somehow being punished, right? So there's a lot of different aspects to that piece there. And ultimately when it comes to like dealing with other clients that think that it's a horrible thing and whatever, there's not much I can do about it. I think it's really at the end of the day, I just have to know that deep down, I know what I'm doing is helping people, and I take it very, very seriously. And I know that what I'm doing is good. And it's not my job to convince people of what I'm doing or to try to change their minds. And I kind of have to just separate from that.
I love that, because to
Mhm.
me, it's like I was just getting shivers like all down my spine when you were talking about like the energy of like religion and power and
Mhm.
control, and it's like I feel like the more you educate people, probably why I felt drawn to some of these questions,
Yeah.
the better it's going to be, because more people are going to be open to going to mediums and psychics, and I think
Right.
we've come a long way with that, because
Oh yeah.
I've really been scared to share basically who I am,
Yep.
because of that exact reason, coming here on my personal page, like,
Mhm.
just the judgment. And it makes me happy that you're like getting out and talking about it so openly and confidently, and just like, yeah, sharing your knowledge, because I think a lot more people are psychic and mediums
Yeah.
are hiding, the closet mediums. And
Mhm.
because the more we can teach, the more we can empower like everybody to tap in and not live in such a clouded, you mentioned brain fog earlier when we were chatting.
Yep.
And I've
Yep.
had like the worst brain fog
Mhm.
for years. And when I decided that I wanted to change my diet and my lifestyle, similar to yourself, like with sobriety, that all of a sudden it like just woke me up to all these
Yeah.
things. So I feel like how we're taking care of ourselves too. Like I think that some people are completely blocking themselves with their
Oh yeah.
diet based on how they're numbing themselves, instead of opening up to some of the things that we're doing and getting readings.
Mhm.
So how would you do a reading? Do you pull out cards? What do you do?
Yeah, so for anybody, it definitely depends on the person. You know, some people maybe their first time, and sometimes I'll have to kind of just run them through a little bit of how it works to kind of ease them a little bit. And again, I always like to just try to tap into the energy of the person around that I'm sitting with and just to feel out what's good for them. Again, a thing that's so helpful is just like I trust spirit, and I know that whatever they bring through is going to be what the person can handle and needs to hear, and I really trust that. I really try not to filter it. Of course, there's definitely a skill behind that as well. I know that there's people out there that use it as an excuse to sometimes say things that maybe aren't very helpful. And I definitely don't try to do that. But really, it's tapping into the person's comfortability level, where they're at, what they're really hoping to get out of the experience, just to help kind of understand the energy around that. But really, I first just tap into them. And initially, when I first tap into somebody, I'm just going to see whoever they have kind of pop up. And sometimes, it will be a person that I've felt around for a few days and I know that they're going to come through and they kind of dominate the whole thing. Other times I get like 8 people, and they all kind of have to share a little bit here and there. Sometimes it's a combination of stuff. So it really varies on what the person needs. Because also sometimes I'll get like 1 or 2 loved ones in spirit, but then I'll also get like information on past lives and like a lot of stuff on that person's personal life too. But one of the things that I absolutely love that tends to really happen pretty often in my sessions is that a lot of the spirits that I connect with, they often really want to take me back to square one of their life. And they explain basically all their life experience and what made them who they are, who they were when they were alive, and what formed them, what shaped them. And in turn, also how that affected my sitter when with the relationship with that person. And it's for a lot of reasons. I think a big piece of it is not only to help have a deeper understanding. See, and often this is people that maybe were abusive in their living lives, right? But it will often be like that it's not an excuse, but it's to give this deeper understanding of why they may have treated this person so badly or why they acted the way that they did. And then to also understand how it's reflected itself now on my sitter's life and how they can now change that, and just having this better awareness and this opening and understanding of like this pattern in family ancestry and just that whole situation. And that I always find so gratifying and is always so healing for the sitter, because at first this happens a lot where when that starts happening, the sitter will kind of stop me and they'll be like, well, why are they talking about this? Like, I don't really want to hear, like, I don't really care. Or like, they're like, I don't really understand why they're bringing up, their childhood. Like, that's not why I'm here. Because a lot of times it doesn't make sense, like in the beginning, but it's like as we get towards like the end of the reading, it all kind of pieces together. And it's this really well-rounded experience to me of just all different aspects that are really needed by the sitter.
I love the way you explain that because I recently had a reading with you.
Yeah.
I went through that journey and I love that because like you said, every medium is different. And I can tell you have like lots of background because I love how you, exactly what you said, like you tie it all together. And so I got a lot out of the session, but I also got a lot after the session. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand, that this is like so powerful that you get so many messages if you're open.
Yeah.
Your words. So it's not always in the now. Sometimes it's for the future too.
Exactly.
And, how it all comes together, and how you can start living a healthier life and a happier life. So it's not about connecting with a loved one that's passed away because you're grieving.
Yep.
For me, it was my cousin that I really didn't know, and
Yeah.
but it brought a lot of understanding of myself. And I feel like that's the whole point, is like the more people you can reach out to do things like this, the more you're going to learn about yourself. So it's like it's just like such a beautiful healing in so many different ways. And I feel like until you experience it, you don't really have, I feel like you're not allowed to have an opinion.
Right. Well, yeah. And I think it's just, yeah, absolutely. Like, I love how you put that, because I think also sometimes that's where like a lot of mediumship is maybe lacking sometimes. Cause I feel like maybe like the super strict, like evidential mediumship, it's like, got a dad, died of cancer. He loves you. Good, done. And it's like, some people may need that, because of course there are definitely some people that are going to be very skeptical, and maybe they need like this like very dry, like fact-based situation, and that's going to give them healing, and that's fine. And and that's what's also interesting, is like the way information comes through varies based on what that person needs. So sometimes, yeah, I will get like very factual stuff because that person's skeptical. And it just depends. And I've also had situations where like I've had a person come to me hoping to talk to one person, and then this other spirit that they really weren't expecting to talk to dominates the whole session. But then they come back a second time, and the person that they really wanted to hear from then comes through, because they needed to have that first experience to validate the situation and trust the process. And the other thing that I really try to do is I try to make sure that, and it's also like the spirits will kind of do this for me, but by the end of the session, they also will often give me information based on how the sitter can connect with them in their everyday life. And knowing that like you don't need a medium every day to connect with your loved ones at all. And if anybody tells you that, like, I wouldn't necessarily trust them, because yeah, like of course it's a different experience when you're connecting with a medium. It's going to be a different type of conversation, but you absolutely, like, you will always have the most strong connection at an end. And no medium is going to have a stronger connection to a mother and her child. It doesn't matter if they're a medium or not. You're going to have that connection that no one else has. And I always love how spirits will give me very specific and kind of unique ways that they've already been trying to come through to them. And then it kind of helps the sitter be like, oh yeah, like I thought that might be them, but I didn't trust it. And it kind of validates that process. And then it allows them to kind of take this healing journey outside of the session and to really build on it, which is something that I'm really, really try to do, that so someone doesn't think that like they have to constantly keep going back to someone or anything, to really empower them, kind of give them their power back with that whole situation.
I love that. And I love what you said. It's more about empowering people, like you come back and you get more and you can keep adding on, but you don't have to do that in order to have that connection with spirit.
Right.
You're kind of teaching in
your
too. So I love that. And I can't wait to read your book when it comes out.
Yeah.
Because I know you're doing, it's going to be an amazing read. And I'm not a reader, but I'm looking forward to the education piece of it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
And do you want to like pull out a card or do a little?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, pull a card. Let's see.
I mean, however you want to do it, but
sure.
Replay, have a feeling, because it's like midday.
Yeah, I figured I can pull a card for everybody that's watching. What's like coming up right now?
Ooh, I hope I'm in there.
Yeah, you are.
such a blessing. I don't know what you charge for sessions, but something tells me like it's very reasonable because you seem like the type of person who wants to help people, not just make money.
Yeah, yeah.
A good trait, I think.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. I mean, I really try to make it accessible because I think that's, I don't know, even when like celebrity mediums or things like that, where it's like I've seen where it's like $1,000 for like a 45-minute session. And that's just like, I just don't even, I feel like I get it if you're like famous or whatever, but at the same time, like that's a little much to me. No, I really try to make it as accessible as I possibly can. I try to be really reasonable because, yeah, like you were saying, I just want it to be really accessible to really anybody because everybody deserves that level of healing. It doesn't matter who you are. Let me just see here. I got a card. Ooh, cool. So I got the dragon card, which is beautiful. So I usually like to just read, huh?
There's a delay. So like I'm seeing you on Facebook. That's how I'm watching. But there's
Oh.
a delay, so I haven't seen the card.
Oh, whoops. Technology, right? All right. The dragon. So, seeing one's most true self, balancing the ego. The dragon sees everything. Its essence has been with us since before our first breath and will be there at our last. It watches us navigate the external world as well as our inner world. When dragon energy is awakened, we are courageous, visionary, and can easily drop into witness consciousness. It is almost as if we are traveling with a great friend inside of ourselves. When we look into the mirror, deep into our eyes, we may even glimpse the self behind the self, the one who is watching us. This is the power of the dragon, breathing transformative fire into every cell of our bodies. Witnessing this omnipotent energy, even for a brief moment, helps us surrender and let go. We let the dragon guide us, we hop on its back for a ride, and as we traverse even the most difficult terrain, the dragon's eyes see beauty everywhere. It is said that if a yogi does not see beauty in the world, their Agni is dim. Agni is described as the inner fire or sacred intelligence. May even just the mention of the dragon stir the embers of intelligence within you. And this is associated with the third eye. So I was like reading the summary of something, but then I always like to tap into it myself. And I just feel like this is such a perfect card for an audience and like as a whole. I just feel like it's tapping into, I think, what a lot of people are going through collectively right now. I think we're going through so many different transitions and so much of even just this pandemic and everything. We've really been forced to kind of face our inner world in a way that we wouldn't have otherwise. And for me, like, I'm glad that I've been able, like, I'm not saying it hasn't been, I mean, great the whole time, right? But it's at least allowed that opportunity. It's been able to give me that space to open up to anything that may be still hanging out there that I need to pay attention to or that I need to work on, and really focusing on healing myself even more. I think it's given us this like rare opportunity to really retreat inside ourselves and to give ourselves that kind of peace and stillness when really like the world is so, going a million miles an hour all the time. It's really hard to cultivate that for ourselves sometimes when we're trying to just do all this work and always being busy. And that's where I feel like this has been so good. It's kind of brought up a lot of maybe old wounds or things that need to be healed right now. And although I think we're still kind of in the process of it, I really do feel that overall it's almost like this big reset button that's been pressed on our planet, kind of. It's just been this kind of like, okay, everybody needs to stop for a second and reassess what we're doing here, and needs time to integrate what's going on here and really focusing on themselves in a way that they haven't had a chance to in a long time. So I really feel like that's resonating for with me.
Yeah. I don't think you even know how much you help people.
Oh, thank you.
It's making me want to cry. Like a warm person, and I feel like just spending like the afternoon with you,
Yeah.
in the morning, because it's like I don't think you realize how just being in your presence helps people. Like it doesn't matter if you're even doing mediumship work, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like like if you get into more of your art or the book, it just feels like that's gonna transform like the world.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
so I feel like showing your face like more
Yeah.
good. I know you're doing a program right now called Thrive, which I'm in, and it's
Yes.
been so helpful. Like I feel like I'm pretty much healed just from like 3 weeks or 2 weeks.
Yay.
And I mean, it's not even an expensive program to me for all that you're getting.
Mhm.
So, are people able to go into that program still? I feel like they can.
Yeah, they absolutely can. And another good thing is that actually me and Laura are working on being able to offer it again as well. So for anybody that's, it's not convenient for them right now, we're working on a way to kind of like make it half virtual and then half like laser coaching or like mini readings with it. We're kind of trying to like do different ideas there to just make it more accessible to as many people as we can. So yeah, people can absolutely look into that. It's for people with chronic illness, mental or physical. And I can add the link for you to put in the comments. Yeah, but that's something I'm offering right now. And yeah, and also for people that don't know, I also offer crystal healing jewelry that I make as well. That's a big piece of a lot of the stuff that I do too. I'm very passionate about sharing my knowledge of stones. I'm actually currently doing a live Facebook series on crystals because it's just been requested so much. It's something that was like I had a little pause on because of Thrive, but I'm going to be getting back at it. I'm hoping this following week. So I'll give all of my information, of course, to put in the comments, but people can find all my information at daisyfarrellmedium.com as well. And on Facebook and Instagram, it's the same thing.
Okay. And do you have a YouTube channel?
I do actually. I don't have as much on there as I'd like, but a lot because a lot of the lives I do and everything are going to be on Facebook. But for the most part, all of that gets put onto the YouTube.
Okay, cool. So
Yeah.
put all that information in. Is there anything else that you want to share before we finish up?
Yeah. I mean, I think again, it's just one thing that I really just like to make a point of just saying. It's just like I really am very passionate about just making a very unique experience for each person I work with. And that's why, again, like I work with jewelry, I make orgone pyramids, I do healing work, so again, I don't want people to feel intimidated or anything like that. Cause I think sometimes people get very overwhelmed or they don't even know what they need. But what I really try to help with is just to kind of show them what I'm feeling guided by spirit for and like what they need. And, yeah, and I would just love to work with anybody. If anybody has any questions or they ever want to reach out to me, don't hesitate to message me at all. And I'm happy to give you more information or anything like that. So yeah, and I just thank you so much for having me on here.
Welcome. And just because you're so genuine, I feel like it just makes everybody more comfortable. So if it's like their first
Yeah. Yeah.
time a medium, that it doesn't have to be like scary
Right. Right.
like you just know how to make everything like light and easy.
Mhm.
So I feel like, and it's not if you want to cry or something that people feel comfortable to cry
Oh yeah.
to and open up where you're so open with your addiction stuff to
Yeah.
say, hey, I have an addiction as well that maybe they've never told anybody before.
Yeah.
It creates this really like safe space, I feel like, and there are really great mediums out there, but for myself, that I just didn't feel that not safety, but I think the comfort
Yeah.
with. So it's nice that you have that nurturing side, and I
Right.
think that's part of your personality. But it shows that again that you have this big background. I feel like your background's just gonna get bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't want to ask another question, but I'm like, I don't know when I'll be able to ask again.
Oh, go for it.
I'm sure other people relate. When it comes to spirit guides,
Mm,
a lot of people like don't know how to access spirit guides, and we
right.
talk a lot about like people in loved ones. I feel,
Mhm.
but when it comes to their spirit guides, are you able to tell them who their spirit guide is and like how they can?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's something that definitely comes up a lot. What I would definitely say, one thing I love to just talk about with spirit guides is that, again, similar to basically all of this, right? There's a lot of opinions out there, and I've heard a lot of different opinions saying that, certain people can't be your spirit guide, like if like a loved one spirit is not allowed to be a spirit guide or stuff like that. Again, I'm very much an advocate of like do what feels right for you and make it a unique thing for you because you're getting this stuff for a reason. You have your own unique way of connecting for a reason. And when it comes to spirit guides, I think it's the same thing. They can be whatever you feel compelled to. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be an animal, it could be an ancestor, it can be a loved one in spirit, it could be a higher self, it could be all kinds of things, angels, different types of spirits. I think it's kind of very vast and endless what they can be. And I feel that, yeah, I think there's some that are kind of born with you and are with you your whole life. And then I kind of think that there are ones that kind of come in and out of your life during very important transitions or important moments in your life for a temporary piece of time, but they're still always accessible even after that has passed. I think as far as connecting with them, it's just creating this practice of meditating or creating a quiet space for yourself. You don't even have to meditate. I think, again, people get afraid of meditation or whatever. And you don't have to completely zone out or, really meditate. Even if you just gaze at a candle or look at a picture, it can really be very open-ended. I think one of the things with meditation is that people think that it has to be the absence of thought, and it's not at all. It's more just observing what is going on. And if you're thinking, that's still meditating, you're observing it. So really, like, finding a time to just quiet yourself, be alone, and just even ask, are there any guides that want to show themselves to me? I would love to see what you want to show me. And no matter how weird it is, or if you get something really odd or any kind of image, even if it's like a banana or something, right? Just writing it down and not judging it at all. And then I think another thing is that people sometimes get stuck with guides where, especially I think when it comes to doing it themselves, is that they like have to know the name of the guide, or they have to know exactly who they were and what their life was like and why they're there. And as much as that's great to know, I think a big part of that is like our human ego area. And I know for me, a long time I was like that. I was like, well, I want to know the names and I want to know all of this. And I let that go. And it's like sometimes the names just aren't really necessary. I think because the thing is like you don't need their name to be connected to them, to call them in. And often they're going to give you very specific symbols or signs that they use to show you that they're around or to use to bring them in. So for that, just like with regular loved ones in spirit, it's kind of developing a relationship that's very personal and very much just a process. And as you strengthen that relationship with a guide, more things come up and they show you more and you understand their energy better and what they feel like and their purpose. And you could also absolutely work with other people to help bring through guides and just kind of confirm things that you've brought through. It's kind of endless. Like you can do a lot of different things with that. But I would just say to start like with just not being intimidated by it or afraid of it, right? Just really starting basic with it.
Like, you're so powerful, it's crazy. So are you gonna do you think, because you mentioned to me before that you might like start teaching something?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I definitely plan to have a lot of stuff available in the future. Like I was saying, I mean, right now I've been doing just the videos on crystals and just helping people kind of feel more empowered with that and just expanding their knowledge on it. But yeah, I absolutely intend on helping other people with all of that stuff. But I also it's not like on my website, but I do mentor people that are having, wanting to expand their abilities or understand them better. That's also kind of like something that I'll do in just a session. Like a lot of people, sometimes they don't even want to really connect with spirit, but they're connecting with me because they feel like they have these abilities and they're kind of overwhelmed or they don't know really where to turn next. So that's absolutely also a service that I often offer for really anybody.
I didn't know that, so I'm gonna do that with you.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Yeah, I just kind of tap into what the person needs and where they need to go and kind of it's very specific, kind of unique things for them of like what they need to do to focus on expanding those abilities. I also plan on offering some mediumship and psychic development circles that I will have available on my Facebook page too. And along with other like psychic development tools and so forth.
Amazing, because I think that there are a lot more people out there, like even just after this live, that'll watch and kind of feel like, maybe that's something I wasn't going to do, but now I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Because that stuff is just triggering things for me too.
Mm-hmm.
I like getting together in groups with other people too that are similar. So not only
Yeah.
time with you, but then you get to meet other people that are like you, which sometimes is hard to find in this type of
Oh yeah, yeah. This stuff can be very isolating sometimes, I think, for people that are starting out. I know for me, it was extremely isolating. And I know because it was like I already felt isolated being younger and sober. And so then it was like, okay, now I'm going to add this whole other thing to it. So for a while, yeah, it takes time to kind of transition out of that and figure out like, okay, where are my people? And it can take a while because again, there's a lot of different types of people in that kind of world too. So it can take some time to kind of find what vibes with you. And yeah, no, but I love helping people kind of figure that out too, and trusting that. Because I think sometimes they don't trust themselves and like they're like, I don't know why I don't feel drawn to this certain group or class, and that's okay. Like then don't do it.
I love that. Just learning to let go of your bad experiences.
Yeah.
Just because you had a bad experience with someone doesn't mean that that's like that would like you said that means you weren't maybe connecting to that person, or they were showing you something that you needed to like work.
Mm-hmm.
And I do find people get a bad taste in their mouth with some things. And
Yeah.
don't go back, and I think that that's unfortunate. So
Oh, totally. Yeah.
hopefully people reach out to you for their first time, because I think
Yeah.
you'll take them under your wing.
Yeah, I try my best to just make people feel, comfortable and relaxed. And because again, I think that's so true for a lot of people have unfortunately have had bad experiences with mediums or psychics or whatever, right? And there's often a lot of fear around that. So I really try to help dispel that and just show like nothing to be afraid of, and it doesn't mean that that's true for everything else. And one last thing that I did want to mention, I also have a free group on Facebook that is made specifically for people that are light workers of any kind and are also simultaneously in any form of program for addiction recovery. Because that's something that, again, I'm very, very passionate about. And I feel like it's so often that it is very much combined and more than we probably even realize. So that's also something that people can access on my Facebook page as well.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, so whenever you have stuff going on, I'll make sure that I share it. And
Yeah.
I have a healing group with Robin's Healing too, which is like a place where people can post any events that they have. And I find a lot of people kind of don't, maybe because they think they're stepping on mine,
Right.
something which they're not.
Yeah.
Looking to create a community, so you can always post things on there too if you have stuff going
Oh,
on.
yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty. So
All right.
when we get off of here, I'm going to put all of your info in, and I'm not going to be able to go into Facebook to turn this, or Zoom to turn this off. Just thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thanks everybody for watching.
And I'm going to share this out so we can get some of this info out to more people.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Bye.